Consider this, a news and information program recorded on the campus of the University of Nebraska at Omaha. From the Fireside Lounge in the Milo Bales Student Center, here is your host, Carol Schrader.
Hello and welcome back to UNO. I'm just chatting with my guest today. We've known each other for a long time, so it's easy for us to get in a chatty mood. And we're going to chat today about animal welfare, how people relate to it, how governments relate to it, and what it takes to keep animal welfare intact and healthy in the state of Nebraska and the Omaha metro area. Darcy Beck is with me. She's vice,
something like that. We never know what we are, kennel cleaner, anything, but for
Special
today,
projects.
I'll be
Vice
Vice President of Public
Marketing
Relations.
and Special President Public Relations. But she has been with the Humane Society for a long time, seen a lot of changes.
Yes.
I bring you here today for a lot of reasons, but I think we think of the Humane Society in the Omaha metro area now that you don't just have contracts with Omaha. I think Bellevue, Ralston, and
All of Sarpy County.
Lord knows how
Yes.
many. So for some of us, many of us in the two-county area, it's time to license.
Mm-hmm.
So I, and I don't mind paying licenses because I think that I get so much love. Okay, we won't, get into that sappy thing, but it's important to do that, and we'll talk about why. But it's also important to understand what all goes into animal welfare, and that, we're not footing the whole bill with our licenses. Basically, licensing is a mechanism that cities and governments use so that they can contract with you or someone else in other parts of the state to do the things that have to be done by law.
Yeah, actually the Nebraska Humane Society is unusual. Most municipalities, larger municipalities, will have their own animal control, like their own police department or fire department.
In fact, you say that on what, is it Animal Emergency or Animal Rescue or something on Animal Planet where the
Right.
little animal cops go out and
Yes.
really heartrending.
It's a huge job. It's a huge job. And unfortunately, when municipalities do it, often the conditions of the local shelter, the pound, are, because money is always an issue. It's not maybe as wonderful as we'd like it to be. In Omaha, the city, and in Sarpy County, the cities there, Bellevue, Gretna, La Vista, Ralston, contract with the Nebraska Humane Society, which is a private nonprofit organization, to provide those animal control services. So it is a little different, but still in all, when we're talking about animal welfare, somebody has to pay the bill.
I don't think people realize that when you pay the licensing fee, most of which, and there's the city gets, has to do processing and all that, so there's some held back, but they turn that money over you not just like, here, take this chunk of change. There's a contract set every
Right.
year, and I suppose it's based on number of animals or something. I don't know, some magic formula.
A magic formula.
A magic formula. And then, because it doesn't really cover all the costs of doing all the things we seem to want done in our area here.
No, it probably never could. That's why we're so fortunate that as a private nonprofit, we're kind of twofold. We have these contracts with the different cities and licensing, impound fees, so on and so forth, monies from the general fund pay for those animal control services. But because in addition, we're a private organization that works off of donations, we can do wonderful adoption programs, education programs, programs that typically you would not see a municipal shelter providing.
But I think the reason this has evolved, and you have in Northwest Omaha have been able to put together such a fine new facility. It's not quite new anymore, but it still has a little polish here and there.
Polish.
Is because this community and some fine people in it, with lots of money to give and not lots of money to give, have said we're committed that the quality of our city is determined on the quality of our animals, and even more than that, the quality of our city is kind of dependent on how our children look upon and treat animals. Our adults, how they look upon and treat animals.
It is linked like this. I think it was Socrates, now I'm not a philosopher, who said we can judge a society by how it treats its animals. That's like the base. If we're doing well there, most likely as we go up the food chain, we're doing well there. But when the bottom, the foundation breaks apart, Lord knows what you're going to contend with. And that's one of the things that we try to educate people, the community, certainly politicians, judges. The link between animal cruelty and human violence has been proven factor for many years.
I don't want to bring up those Lord awful names like Jeffrey Dahmer and some of these characters, but there is a clear link between children who are involved with acts of animal cruelty. In fact, it's considered what they call the triad.
Right.
It's one of three main indicators that if you have one of them, it's not too cool. But if you have that combined with some others, but oftentimes the first way for anyone to tell that there's some serious things going on is how they treat animals, often in secret, so it's hard to tell sometimes. But
yes, if you get to the bottom of Columbine, all these tragedies that we see occurring, very frequently animal cruelty. As you've pointed out, there are others, the fire setting and bedwetting is also
Not
one.
that if you have a bedwetter,
Right.
that in and of itself is usually self-correcting.
Yes.
But that triad, that three-footed stool, is absolutely very predictable. And so, but the thing is, even for those kids that aren't, there's some, serious sociopathic problem. Still, you will notice that how a kid's on the street, you can look at a kid that is cruel to animal, kicks an animal, and you can almost know that this person, and they might feel somebody might have treated them very badly. You don't know, but they might end up being a bully. I mean, there's just some predictable.
Yes, that's why
trends.
Setting an example is key for children, for adults everywhere, and that's something that humane societies we certainly try to do. And then that compassion education is another factor. One of the programs that we have, which is very, very interesting, is Project Heart, Humane Education for At-Risk Teens, where we send 3 wilder kind of adolescent crazy dogs to the Nebraska Youth Correctional Facility.
And you got some wild adolescent kind of
You
crazy
got
kids,
some wild
and I don't
guys
mean insane.
there.
I mean, but that are
Yes,
they're on the wrong path.
It's a serious high security facility.
Right.
And these young men have to go through quite a process to be selected.
And then they kind of train the dogs, and they have to consistency, care,
Yes.
love.
It's beautiful. We train the young men. We have trainers that actually go into the prison, and using positive reinforcement techniques, they train these young men how to train these dogs. It's wild. It's actually to watch it is an incredible thing. To see one of these rough guys that is truly headed on a bad path, take this animal, sit, oh, good boy.
And having to do it 100
and
times.
hugging and kissing. These are words that this child may have never heard in his life. Good boy. And yet, there it goes. It's a wonderful, wonderful program.
We can't talk about that kind of thing too early in the show. But the point I was trying to make, and we can go on and on about that and other things, but is that you always kind of call it the softer side of Sears.
Yes.
And I don't mean soft like, but the things that other humane societies or city or governmental things, because the shortage of money, and certainly now
Right.
can't do, but because of the way you're set up.
Yes, all of those private donations can go to support the softer side of Sears. The programs like Project Heart, Project Pets, where we place animals, trained animals, as residents in long-term care facilities. Our elderly, we all know what a problem that is. And
Loneliness and
yes,
depression.
And what a difference pets can make. And yes, it's wonderful to bring a pet in to visit, but sometimes that just doesn't do it. We actually place animals there permanently.
As house animals.
Yes, this is my cat. This is my dog. We have a wonderful tape from an Alzheimer's facility, talk about making you sobbage and whinage, as my mother would say. A greyhound was placed there. It's a beautiful, gentle greyhound. And the women are all kind of gathered around. They're in their wheelchairs, they're seated, and they're petting this beautiful, docile dog. And one of the ladies starts singing in this frail little voice, "Oh, you beautiful dog, you great big beautiful." And the others join. Really, you're on the floor. When you see what it means to them to have this unconditionally loving ball of fur.
And they may have lost memory. They may not even be able to relate to their children or their grandchildren, but there's something that pulls out
Ah,
that is just more than you can deal with.
yes, it's stories like that that make me know I've got the best job in the world.
But the bottom line is, and you do stuff in the elementary schools and
Yes.
almost every school level. The thing is that animal welfare, the safety and welfare of animals and how we treat animals, as we mentioned, is kind of fundamental to how we relate to people. But on the other side, there are protections that we need from animals and rules that we need, like rabies vaccinations. That yes,
Absolutely.
they're a pain in the you-know-what. I write that bill. And, at one time we had 5 animals at our house, 3 cats and 2 dogs. And, but I know they're safe, I'm safe. And any time that the state or group of people or communities lets up, then we are at risk.
We're exposing ourselves to some serious dangers, as I'm sure viewers know. Rabies is not a curable disease. If you actually show clinical signs of rabies, you're
And
a
once
dead person.
Once you're there. Fortunately,
Right.
if you can catch an animal or aware of an animal, even take a preventive shot if you can't find the
Yes.
animal. And at least the shots are much better.
Oh,
than
much
they
better.
used to
It's
be.
not the
in the
scary
stomach,
thing that it was. But rabies is a very, very scary thing. And that's what people need to know about animal control. Animal control equals public safety. These are not issues that are just the dog catcher, chasing the little fluffy dog.
Well, the old kind of comedic thing, I'm going to get that kid. I mean, this dog's
Yes,
been dogging
yes.
this dog catcher for...
Yes, or that old Norman Rockwell dog. Those days are gone days. Today, animal control is quite sophisticated. If you have a child on a playground and there's a loose, aggressive animal, literally that animal can kill. You need to have some people that you can call, whether you own a pet or not, to remove that animal and handle a situation like that. Rabies, somebody needs to make sure that animals that bite are quarantined so they are not showing
They've
signs.
recently out in central Nebraska, in the York area, Kearney area, had some animals show up that had been bitten by wild animals that had rabies. And then they had been in contact with some people. I don't know if
Yes.
they bit them or what.
Yes, they did.
And so I think a handful of people, at least maybe 5, had to go through
the
the
treatment of
rabies
shots.
shots.
Yes.
But at least there was some system to follow through with that, because that protected those human beings.
Correct. And as a matter of fact, our domestic animals are kind of a buffer. Bats and skunks are carriers
Notorious.
for carrying rabies. They're more likely to bite an animal, your dog or your cat, who is protected by the rabies shot. So you're one more step away from, the real danger. And frankly, it's critical. And it's critical that somebody keeps track, somebody quarantines animals that have bitten, so we can prevent a death.
Now, I don't have a grudge in this respect, but let me present something. Pet owners in, let's say, Omaha or Bellevue or Ralston or Papillion or however, whoever, we pay a license fee. And I don't have any problem with that at all. But we're in essence paying all of the city's responsibility for animal. Now, granted, I got an animal, I'll pay. But everybody else is off the hook, or the people that don't pay that have animals that you don't know about.
You know, it's a difficult thing, and different cities, and even within our contract with different cities, choose to pay for animal control in different ways. Cities typically will allocate some monies from the general fund or per capita.
Which I think they do in Omaha. There's
Yes, and in Bellevue, Sarpy County as well. And then the rest is made up of fees.
And that's
how they
That's fair.
choose to do that, because you are absolutely right. You do not have to own a pet to utilize animal control. We have thousands of people that call us every year because there's a bat in their living room.
And they're Belfry.
There's a vicious dog on the playground.
And I'm, you know, I think the system we have here and seems to be working. I mean, everybody seems to be protected. I pay for I guess, the pleasure of my animals and knowing that they're safe and that they have their shots and everything's cool. We do have cats and dogs, and now I'm hearing armadillos might be moving into the state. The northward trek, because their land, their place, their habitat. But anyway,
just when you think you've seen it all.
yeah, but you handle a variety of animals that you come in contact with, legal, illegal, even what are considered farm animals.
Pretty much, if it's on 4 legs in our jurisdiction, it's ours.
Or if it squirms, or if it wiggles. Or
Yeah,
if it
and no
slithers.
legs, absolutely. Oh gosh, yes, we've gone into homes. That one comes in mind, the snake. It was a 14-foot, I think a 14-foot python that had triggered a sprinkler system in the apartments. It took like 6 officers to carry this thing out. And you never know, in the hallway of the Humane Society, I'll tour somebody and turn around and there I am with a crocodile. It's literally, figuratively, it can be a wild place.
Now, state law has to deal with animal welfare, not just the local municipalities. There are a few bills in the legislature this session. Could we kind of just, which may or may not pass, but let's get what the senators are interested or feel there needs to be changed. So what are some kind of bullet points on some of the things they're talking about?
Well, one of the things that they are trying to pass, I believe it's 233, Senator Price has put forward that animal control shelters, animal facilities such as the Nebraska Humane Society would also be need to be licensed and subject to inspection. A lot of people think that, oh gosh, that there's some state stamp that you are a humane society or a governmental.
You know, I could start a humane society,
absolutely,
couldn't I?
absolutely. The Carol Schrader Humane Society,
and just because I have that name doesn't mean I've met any standards. And are there standards, national standards, for humane societies?
No, not really. There are a couple.
Not like an organization that you belong to, national accreditation like teachers and schools have.
Yes, it's interesting. There are a couple of national organizations that can certainly help and provide information. The Humane Society of the United States, American Humane, and a lot of people, everyday people, belong to those organizations and pay to support them, thinking that in some way their dollars go back to help the local shelter. But that is not so. That's not the case. So I think it is incumbent on the state, as we inspect commercial breeders and so forth, to make sure that the animals are living in proper conditions and being fed and cared for, that humane societies fall under those same kinds of standards.
So do you think, what's the thinking? I'm not asking you to predict whether, does it look as though that has support?
I think so. I think
no one's objecting radically?
No, certainly money is an issue, but for this kind of state inspection. However, what has been put forward is that by adding these other entities that need to be licensed and inspected, that their fees would go to cover that amount.
The cost.
So it would be
so
self-supporting.
It's a pay-as-you-go. Okay. What are some of the other things? I know Senator Chambers is always interested in in animals. I mean, that's become, we heard about when his dog passed on, and
Yes.
he's very passionate
Very
about, as he is
dedicated.
everything, as he
Yes,
is about everything that he
yes.
introduces.
And frankly, there's some great ideas there that really need to be looked at. Better conditions. I don't want to. Certainly, there are some wonderful commercial breeders, but we need to make sure that commercial breeders in our state are not turning into the puppy mill.
Just
that,
with a better face on him,
yes,
so to speak.
These are very.
Well, these are touchy issues.
Yes, they are. But what we don't want, what I don't want, what you don't want is that Fluffy and Buffy they're not inventory. They're not commodities. These are living, breathing creatures, and as such, cages need to be a certain size where they can move.
Is there a bill that discusses that?
Yes. In many conditions, these animals may never see the light of day, may never take a breath of fresh air. You want to hear about puppy mills? What it can look like?
Well, you're talking about, other commercial, I guess I think of, I know if I go to, I think it's PetSmart, they have Humane Society animals. But there are pet stores that I have never bought one from, not for any particular reason. Got my dogs elsewhere from Humane Society or from a breeder. But these are reputable people. I mean, how do you pass something like this and decide who should spay and neuter their animals that they sell, for instance, which is one thing I think under consideration.
One thing that probably I may have
won't.
even been dropped from it.
But there was talk about
But
that.
that people that resell, in other words, that they're a retailer, a pet shop, would be selling animals that they got from maybe a commercial breeder, whoever.
Or a private
so
owner.
one of the pieces of legislation is looking at these mass breeders to be sure that animals are housed properly, that it is humane conditions. The other piece that you're referring to is that the reseller or the retailer would be spaying and neutering the pets. I personally think it's great. I don't think it probably has a chance. And I think that the language has now been changed to must provide literature about the positive
Aspects
of
of
spaying and neutering.
We have a lot of excellent breeders out there
Yes.
who breed a particular breed and sell them because that's how they're able to keep the breed, and do dogs. I mean, it's not that we should look at it as a sport, but it is an interest, a hobby, a passion, and they love their dogs. Generally.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And generally keep them in nicer conditions than
then their children. No, I'm going to
No.
get phone calls.
No, but they are very fearful that any time we pass a law that people won't put them in the same lump as a puppy mill.
Right.
And then when we say, hey, if we lighten up on these laws, everyone will know Omaha's a safe, or Nebraska's a safe state, or Iowa's a safe state. They've had problems. I think Kansas has had problems. What we don't want to be known as a haven where you can hide out in the wilderness.
Right.
But on the other hand, we have a lot of our good breeders living in the wilderness and in the city. And
Yes.
how do we protect them?
Well, those people are the ones that are breeding pets, but they are keeping the conditions, like you say, beautiful, better than many people live. And there is no issue there. The issue is that we're able to look at it, not we, the Nebraska Humane Society, but that a state official is able to look at it and to be certain that minimum standards are being adhered to.
Under this bill, and I know you're not an expert on legislation, that animal welfare shelters should be inspected. Is there a certain, threshold for other inspections? Do they just store any store that resells? Is it breeders? Where do you know?
I believe
draws the
that.
line?
Well, I'm actually not sure. So
So-
the language has kind of gone back and forth on it.
So the final word is
not out
a
yet.
done deal. And one of the things that I know that you champion isn't the right word, but is the microchip.
Absolutely.
and that I think almost all the animals that you adopt out have chips.
We are very, very fortunate at the Nebraska Humane Society. All of the animals we adopt, which was almost 8,000 last year.
8,000?
Yes, about 50 short of that. So we got a goal. They're all spayed, neutered, and microchipped, which is a little transponder that's actually implanted in the fatty tissue at the base of the neck.
And it has some data on it.
Yes.
And it can be read by a reader.
Absolutely scanned.
One thing I wonder, is this pretty universal? Like, have you ever gone to use your credit card in the grocery store, and every grocery store is different? At least they read the credit card.
It's getting better. The universal scanners are getting better. More veterinary clinics are using them.
But if I
Certainly
travel,
shelters.
take old Sparkalina, in the truck, and we go on down to Arizona, and for some reason she gets out, and someone finds her, and would do most welfare and vets, will they be able to read her chip that?
They would scan her. If she's chipped, they're going to be able to get her back to you. Now, it's not a perfect system, but it is recommended that people have. It does not mean it should replace the tag, the ID tag or the rabies tag. That should be firmly affixed to the collar on the animal. But in the case where an animal's going to rub a collar off or
And cats are notorious. Sometimes you put the loose elastic ones on them so that they don't choke themselves.
and they can get out of them, you would need a source of permanent identification, whether it's a tattoo or a microchip or something. That's what's recommended, is both.
Well, we're running down towards the end of the show. I think that and I know you don't have exact numbers, but the sheer hugeness, vastness, greatness of the number of kittens and puppies that are born every year. I know you don't have the exact statistics, but it could be 7 to every child born.
I think it is 7 puppies and kittens born to every human born.
So that means, where are these animals? They either died, some of them died a not happy death because they were,
Nationally,
not out, in the wild. But that's a huge number. If you could see, I can go to school and see kids, right, and go on the street and see kids. If you imagine that actually 7 times that were born as kittens or puppies.
what it would mean in short is that in order to solve the pet overpopulation program, that every adult, every person
would
have to own 7 animals and be able to recycle that in an animal's life. In other words, I might live to be 70, but they got to own a lot of pets.
Something to think about, even though the lifespan is shorter. Something to think about. Darcy, happy licensing.
Thank you.
Happy humaneness.
Thank you.
Darcy Beck, the Nebraska Humane Society, thanks for joining us. UNOTV.unomaha.edu is where you can find this show and more about Consider This. Have a great week.